Why do some people seem to win huge in life while taking almost no risk at all? Think about it. Bill Gates, Sam Walton, Richard Branson. 3 very different people. 3 very different paths. Yet all of them followed the same invisible playbook, one that makes failure almost painless while making success absolutely massive. It's called the Dhandho way. Heads I win. Tails I don't lose much. Imagine building a business or an investment strategy where your downside is tiny but your upside could change everything. That's what you're about to learn. This story centers on Mohnish Pabrai, a self-made millionaire who built a billion-dollar investment firm. By studying the patterns behind the greatest entrepreneurs in history, he says business schools teach us the wrong things. They tell us to innovate, to take risks, to go all in. But the billionaires who quietly dominate the world? They do the opposite. They clone. They strip risk down to zero. And they let time and compounding do the heavy lifting. Let's start with the myth of originality. We're told you have to invent something new. The truth? Some of the wealthiest people alive copied shamelessly. Microsoft Word was cloned from WordPerfect. Excel was cloned from Lotus. Bing was cloned from Google. Bill Gates wasn't some lone genius. He was the world's greatest cloner. Sam Walton, founder of Walmart, admitted he had no original ideas. On family vacations he'd pull off the highway, leave his family in the car, and march into random stores just to hunt for one new idea. His philosophy was simple: if someone else is doing something better, copy it, refine it, and make it cheaper. Walmart became a Frankenstein of ideas and the richest family on earth was born. Even Starbucks, which we think of as an innovator, was cloned. Howard Schultz saw coffee culture in Italy and simply brought it home to America. Now let me ask you, why is cloning so powerful? Because the demand already exists. The hardest part of starting anything is proving people want it. Cloning skips that. It's the shortcut no one talks about. And if you combine cloning with risk reduction, that's when you unlock the Dhandho Formula. We think entrepreneurship is risky. Author Mohnish Pabrai says the opposite. 9-to-5 jobs are riskier. You spend your one life working on someone else's dream, and in one round of layoffs you could be done. Entrepreneurs, on the other hand, design for survival. Richard Branson wanted to start an airline. A 747 costs hundreds of millions of dollars. He didn't buy one. He called Boeing until finally, out of frustration, someone transferred him to their leasing department. Boeing had a used jumbo just sitting around. Branson convinced them to lease it to him. Here's the genius part: airlines sell tickets months before a plane takes off. He used customer money to pay the bills. He paid for fuel 30 days after landing. He paid Boeing after flying. No capital, no risk. If it failed, Boeing repossessed the plane. If it worked, Virgin Atlantic was born. Heads he won. Tails he lost nothing. So how do you start? You don't quit your job. As Pabrai says, let some other yo-yo pay your rent while you build your thing. Out of 168 hours in a week, 56 go to sleep, 40 go to work. That still leaves 72. The secret is to repurpose the hours most people waste. Pabrai worked 4 hours each night after work and 10 hours per day on weekends. He didn't even try to be a star employee. He aimed to be just above firing level. Good enough to keep the job, no longer giving the extra energy because that energy was redirected to his startup. He called it the ultimate test. If your project doesn't make Netflix feel boring, it's not your project. This brings us to one of his greatest lessons: your brain is not smart enough to invent the right business in isolation. Customers will tell you what matters, if you listen. He learned this in the most painful way. Early on, he pitched a huge bank with a slick 11-slide deck. Halfway through, the executive stopped him. Go back to slide 10. Don't move. That one slide, one problem, was the only thing they cared about. Everything else was noise. By the end of the meeting, Pabrai had a purchase order for that one solution. He left, tore up the deck, expanded slide 10 into 20 slides, and built his company around it. His own idea was wrong. The customer's pain point was right. That's the Dhandho way: rapid prototyping and ruthless listening. And here's the part most people can't stomach: rejection. Pabrai sent 200 physical letters every single week to senior IT leaders. Physical letters, because email was too noisy. He used mail merge tricks to shorten names, so David became Dave. The assistant couldn't tell if it came from a personal contact, so the letters slipped through. 1 week later, he called all 200. If no answer, he logged it and tried again in 2 weeks. Then 4. Then 8. Then 16. He tracked every step like math. Letters became calls. Calls became meetings. Meetings became closes. Within 9 months, the numbers worked, the funnel proved itself, and his business was cash flow positive. Most people send 6 emails, get discouraged, and quit. But this is a numbers game. His daughter proved it again. She wanted a hedge fund job with no finance degree. She mailed 1,200 physical letters to funds in New York and Los Angeles, each with a 2-page stock pitch attached. One letter reached a retired fund manager who passed it to a friend. That friend hired her at a salary higher than business school graduates. The moral of the story? Success is rarely about brilliance. It's about persistence, high signal channels, and messages with real emotional impact. Dhandho is not just about math, it's also about character. Adam Grant divides the world into givers, matchers, and takers. Takers burn bridges. Matchers keep score. But givers, the ones who help without expecting return, accumulate goodwill that compounds just like money. That goodwill turns into introductions, deals, referrals. Over time, the world conspires to help the giver. Another lesson: look for offering gaps. Imagine Town A and Town B, both with barbershops. A new Town C pops up between them with no barber. One barber from Town A rents a tiny space in Town C, 1 day a week. Customers rush in, otherwise they'd drive half an hour. He charges more than usual because he saves them time. The day fills. He adds Tuesdays. Eventually, full-time. He took almost no risk. That's an offering gap. Starbucks was born from an offering gap. Howard Schultz saw Italians savoring coffee culture and realized Americans had nothing like it. He filled the gap. From there, you build moats. Amazon Prime locks customers in. Costco memberships create psychological loyalty. Humans form habits. Once someone sits in your barber chair, they don't want to switch. Once they pay for Prime, they stop comparing prices. That's how moats grow. Recruiting is another overlooked Dhandho strategy. Elon Musk personally interviewed the first 3,000 SpaceX hires. Steve Jobs said A players hire A players. The moment you hire a B player, they hire C players, and the slide begins. Integrity is the non-negotiable trait. Intelligence and work ethic matter. But without integrity, the others are dangerous. And you must fire fast. It is kinder to them and to your team. While your business attacks the upside, your investments quietly compound in the background. The rule of 72 is your compass. Divide 72 by your return to know how long money takes to double. At 7%, 10 years. At 10%, 7 years. At 15, 5 years. The math is simple but devastatingly powerful. In 1623, the Dutch bought Manhattan for $23. People laugh at how little it was. But had that $23 been invested at 7%, today, it would be worth $23 trillion, more than 1/6 of all U.S. household wealth. The point isn't the land. It's that compounding over centuries makes starting amounts almost irrelevant. This is why you must save before you spend, automate investing, and ignore the circus of day trading. Compounding is boring in the short term, but over decades, it's unbeatable. The Patel Motel story shows Dhandho at scale. When Idi Amin expelled Indians from Uganda, Patel families landed in the U.S. with little money and no status. They pooled savings, bought tiny motels, lived in 2 rooms, and fired all staff. They ran everything themselves. With labor costs gone, they could undercut rivals. Occupancy rose. Profits bought the next motel. Nephews were sent to run each one. Decades later, Patels, 0.1% of the U.S. population, own nearly 80% of the motels in America. That is the Dhandho way: eliminate costs, minimize risk, scale patiently. And here's a final truth: the biggest mistakes are not the times you lost money. They are the times you sold too early. Buffett says out of hundreds of investments, only a dozen truly made Berkshire Hathaway. The genius wasn't buying them. It was never selling. Pabrai once bought Fiat Chrysler for pennies on the dollar. He made a few times his money and sold. But inside Fiat Chrysler was Ferrari. Today Ferrari alone is worth $100 billion. Holding would have made him nearly $1 billion more. He calls this circling the wagons, protecting your crown jewels and never letting them go. So here's the bottom line. Gates dropped out of Harvard with no real risk. Branson started an airline with no real risk. Patel's built a lodging empire with no real risk. The losers in history are not the entrepreneurs who cloned and minimized downside. The losers are the ones who never tried, the ones who played it safe in jobs they hated, the ones who ignored their music inside. What should you do? Clone what works. Structure your moves so the worst case barely hurts. Prototype and listen obsessively until the customer hands you slide 10. Sell with persistence and math. Hire only A players and fire fast. Circle the wagons around your winners. Invest automatically and let compounding handle the background. If your idea makes Netflix feel boring, it's your idea. If your downside is tiny but your upside is life-changing, it's your time. That is the Dhandho way. Heads I win, tails I don't lose much. And if you stayed with me to this point, you already know this. More than half of you watching right now aren't subscribed. That's like walking past free compounding every week. So do me a favor, hit subscribe. And in return, I'll keep cloning what works, compounding the lessons, and bringing you the mental models that can change your future.